Chapter 15. Ulrich sat in the Yakuza-owned casino lounge and watched the hologram of a war game. It was a brain simulation of a war. 1,000 against 1,000, the youngest warrior being only 12 years old and the oldest 76. The youngest was named Hideo Yoshimitsu, and he was the son of Hideo Yoshimitsu. Also in the war game simulation was Itsuki Yoshimitsu, the 65-year-old grandfather of Hideo. 3 generations of men in the same war fighting side by side. The youngling was piloting the fighter jet while his father was co-piloting it and making the decisions of when to use which weaponry, leaving the little Hideo full control of maneuvering the plane. The 65-year-old man was operating a tank on the ground. It was a marvelous spectacle to observe. When the youngling flew over the battleground to scout out the area and draw the wings right off, he would then return to a safer zone and give the exact location of the enemy to his grandpa, who would in return ride his tank at full throttle into the enemy lines, being covered from above with the keen marksmanship of rockets and machine guns controlled by the father. Young Hideo was known to be a hothead. If their mission would turn sour and their grandpa would get ambushed or blown up in his tank, the youngling would kamikaze into the enemies with fiery anger, taking his father out of the simulation with him. About a year ago, the child had a tantrum and was bashing the jet into the enemies no matter what. Maybe out of boredom. But the 3 of them were absolute legends for years in the simulated war realm. If they had a good field day, they could, just the 3 of them, kill over 130 or so men. Playfully, with ease. Their record stood at an impressive combined 208 kills. The father and the kid would guarantee at least 60 or so kills every match. There were no better fighter jet pilots out there. Anyone who wished to challenge them became the laughing stock of the crowd because the duo would absolutely stomp anyone into the ground. The kid would haughtily flex on the challenger, and after savagely destroying him, he would shout out a phrase like, "Dad, can you wipe the windshield? That guy's poo-poo is all over it." The Berlin Panthers were Ulrich's favorite team. He used to be a warrior for the Berlin Panthers during his time at the police academy. He was a fierce and brave one, and his favorite move was to spin like a helicopter while unloading 2 machine guns simultaneously. A dazzling dance of death, taking out at least 20 enemies within 5 seconds before dying. However, the Berlin Panthers weren't doing so well these days, and the crowd didn't really cheer for them. If the crowd doesn't love a team and its superstars, then the team lacks the funds to afford the best of the best. The team then starts losing, and the crowd won't cheer for losers. High testosterone and hyper-aggressive plays were the things that earned the love of the viewers of the war games. 1,000 versus 1,000 simulation would last around 2 to 3 hours before either everyone was dead or the objective was complete. Ulrich slurped half of the beer in his bottle while watching Hideo fly another lap with his father taking out a group of 4 men. He missed the old days of being one of the warriors himself. He is a paratrooper for most of the games, but at times he would operate a bike or snowmobile, getting in and out of important positions to snipe away from his opposition. Cruise in, pop 3 clowns in the head, and race out with hellfire lighting up behind him. An impressive and highly effective way to win a game. He sat there and remembered that he was offered a fair contract, but had to decline because he had already signed up with the military. The Bus and Mandibles were winning another match, with Hideo leading them to victory. Ulrich got up and decided to stroll around the casino. In the middle of the large lounge, there was a lamp that went up to the ceiling with a small forest full with artificial birds and lizards flickering in color. Ulrich hiked through the unnatural forest and enjoyed the rippling waterfall in the middle of it. Falcon sat high up on the rocks on the very top of the waterfall and stretched his wings. The Super Cop remembered his past in the war games, where he, for hitting 99% of his shots with his sniper rifle, earned a Falcon that was coded into the simulation for him. It flew alongside him when he wheelied his motorbike on the side of a 200-meter cliff. He was sure now that he would have been the very best if he had continued on his career path in the war games. He knew that under his leadership, the Berlin Panthers would have crushed the Bazan Mandibles like little turd beetles. He finished his beer and made his way out of the digital forest, still feeling nostalgic. On the strong Hyper Sigma male marched to the large window displaying the nightly panorama of the city. There was a law in place that every casino had to have a window to the outside world and at least 2 clocks on the wall. He remembered his honeymoon with Hina. One evening, they sat between trees by the beach and painted on the same picture while drinking wine and watching the sunset. It was a special moment that still warmed his cruel, cold heart as his gaze stared back at him in the casino window. Romance had faded for him like the beauty of the girl he loved. Nothing but the ugly ruins of what once made him feel happy remained, and not too many things made Ulrich happy. One of the things that did not make him happy, that, in fact, made him sad, was the act of terrorism where a group of nasty subhuman idiots fired an RPG from a mile away onto a shuttle that was taking off to explore the universe. Ulrich was new to the police force back then, and he could still recall the faces of the people from the small farm village next to the space center. The confusion of seeking the bastards who had ruined the marvelous experience of space exploitation adventure remained. Future space traveling went down the drain afterwards. Those were ideas that were too far-fetched for Ulrich. He liked the planet and its life as it was. He liked how humans lived their life and didn't imagine them as staying stuck alone in space-time without any escape within their lifetime. He's utterly blind to the fact that his existence was nothing but materia moving around in a certain way, and that apart from the illusion in his mind, he did not, in fact, exist. He gazed outside the window and the city had no end. Ulrich remembered the sad day when humans realized that they indeed were and would remain alone, isolated in space-time. A guy named Chris Champion, for whom people erected monuments all over the world, had preached that there was no God and explained why. He explained that there was no chance for any other life form to ever appear in the realm of the ape-descendant humans. They believed the preacher and his church, and humans were left alone with their loves and wars, alone in the incredibly vast space, for there was no one to observe or care for their doings and undoings. Alone, lonely. Those were words that came to Ulrich's mind, but there were no tears in his modified eyes.
Sir, may I interest you in another bottle of beer?
The casino could afford an expensive bot. That was really nothing but a waste of money, basically offering the customers more drinks once it observed that they needed a refill. Recently, the law regulating casinos had been changed and the taxation was lowered, but another system was put in place that dictated for the gains to be invested in a certain way. One of the paragraphs mentioned that all casinos must use at least 20% of their gross income toward customer service. Ulrich's favorite casino, the Glitzy Clam, used a basic scheme of buying expensive, overpriced catering bots from a third party owned by the relatives of the casino owners. Such a scheme, however, was not forbidden.
Yeah, give me another one.
So, the cop was only a little tipsy and didn't mind the taste of sparkling barley on his tongue. He let the city gloom hypnotize him while watching the bot roll away in the reflection of the window and then return with a bottle of beer.
Here you go, sir. Cheers, and have a lovely night.
The bot was programmed with a few hundred voice lines he chose from with a randomly generated number. Free will within a tiny net of code, no artificial intelligence. When it came to booze, the casino offered the cheapest trash, even if it could afford the very best. People would just gamble away more money while drinking shitty liquor.
Thanks, buddy.
Church behaved well, even with a pathetic machine like that next to him. He did have to be extra gentle when it came to state or top-shelf AI in general, because there were plenty of systems in place to monitor police officers like him and other state officials on and off duty. Corruption was at an all-time low and remained there from the moment the state involved A to supervise state officials. The robot rolled away and Ulrich remained by the window, staring outside. He observed a bright green neon kiosk opposite the casino with the clerk standing outside by the back door. She observed a tin can of cat food for a while, which she then put away in her pocket. She kept standing there thinking about something. Ulrich observed that the pauses were too long, that the way she was looking at the packaging was peculiar. Could it be that she stole the cat food for herself? Can it be that she is that hungry for protein that she has to steal cat food from her workplace? I am sure she wouldn't be able to afford a cat with her salary. Since the population had risen so dramatically with no real countermeasure, food had become scarce and highly regulated. On the bottom of the food list were carbohydrates in the form of liquid sugars one could purchase for the cheapest amount. These were followed by vegetables and fruit grown by automatized gardens, all sowed, reaped, and watered by machines. An endless program that was completely self-sustaining. Robots fixing robots, monitoring the whole process of production, calculating the optimal amount of minerals for the plant-based products to grow, and always looking for the most economically efficient way. After vegetables followed fats. And the lowest tier of protein came in forms of powder and gel that was made from insects forever incubated in a closed space, farmed, killed, and processed within a few days. Higher in the food tiers, one could find animal products like eggs and milk. And finally, the most expensive food at the top of the list, which was considered a luxury, was fish and meat. Protein was mainly reserved for scientists and students, but higher officials and policemen were privileged to receive it too. The main reason for this was that glutamate turned out to be important for the frontal cortex, and since it was scarce, only the ones who could afford it or had practical needs for it were allowed to receive it. It was also part of the school of Chris Champion, the great philosopher, the killer of all religions, who truly opened people's eyes. Controlled evolution came too late. People had already multiplied to a level where further AI-calculated breeding was troublesome yet still possible. People still dreamed of the human race being able to escape their planet. They were doomed on a trash planet while they waited for the sun to go dim. Ulrich finished his beer and looked at his sharp jawline in the reflection of the dark window. His face was shivering from hatred as he imagined the poor girl eating cat food just because she was hungry for a little protein. What an ugly place had the world become, waiting for a savior with a large and smart prefrontal cortex to save humanity. Hope was slowly evaporating into the chaos.
Would you like another beer?
The bothead rolled up on Ulrich again, offering him another bottle. It was an angry scream. It punched the machine in its poorly designed face, creating an explosion of plastic and electric sparks. The bar fell apart right there on the ground. Everyone in the casino was alarmed by the loud bang and turned toward Ulrich. He stood there for a period of time observing the mess he had created and then walked to the restroom. He washed his hands clean, looked at himself in the mirror, and listened to the sobbing of a man on the shitter who had gambled his last bit of money away that night.